And hello, everybody. A little bit of a choppy start. I'm still getting the intro for this one worked out, so it's going to be a little bit kind of like I don't know, a little rough for the first couple of weeks, I think. Um, but this is the Saturday Spiritualist. This is the new series that we're starting here on this Uncanny Earth, where I present an alternate spirituality or faith that's not one of the big Abrahamic religions, which would be Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And I'll probably stay away from Buddhism as well because that's a pretty large thing, but I might touch on it a little bit. Um, Rob is going to be focusing more on the more Abrahamic faiths in another series starting on Sundays, I believe. Not sure when exactly we're going to get that started. That's up to him, but keep an eye out for that if you're interested in that and you're not interested in this. Or if you're interested in both, you can watch both. Nothing wrong with that. Um, so the last the first episode one, I gave you a bit of an intro on what I feel spirituality is all about, what it entails, and how to be a slightly more spiritual person in your own life, if that's what you're going for. If you're not trying to be a very religious person, like if you're not trying to go into a church every week or something like that, which is not a bad thing. Just it's not for everybody. Um, so this week I'm going to tackle the first of many different spiritualities that I'm going to try to dig into and try to understand on a slightly deeper level myself, because a lot of these are going to be, some of them are going to be things that I already knew about. They're going to be um, spiritual paths and belief systems that I've researched pretty thoroughly in the past, and we'll get to that, especially once we get into some of the left hand path sort of things. But um but there's also going to be a lot that I don't know a whole lot about other than surface appearances and what I've observed from people who say that they're practitioners. So I'm trying to kind of educate myself a little bit, just as much I'm trying to educate you guys. And to help with that, I have a little bit of absinthe here. It's a bit cloudy because I've put some water and some ice in it. And I'm hoping, despite that I'm not a big fan of the taste, that it kind of puts me in the mindset, I guess. I don't know. Not that you need any sort of excess substances to put you in the right mindset to be spiritual. It's just, something I like to do. You know me, I'm Uncanny Spirits Club, all that other good stuff. So, what do we have for this episode? The one I'm going after this week is the biggin. The biggin is the biggie, the big one. The biggin would be the big one in one word. Um, it's Wicca, which I have known many, many, many people who have said that they are Wiccans, and I've seen many, many Facebook posts from people who claimed to be Wiccans, and many different videos and things from people who said they were Wiccans. And it's difficult to pin down. And after I did a little bit of reading on it, it kind of became clear to me why. Because while Wicca is a huge movement that people identify with, it's also it's very decentralized. They're one of the things I'm looking at with these spiritualities is that they're not organized religions, so to speak. And Wicca very much exemplifies both the widespread yet unorganized nature of spirituality versus like a church or something like that. Um, Now it's considered, and I've looked up the wiki page for us. I'm looking at the Wicca wiki. Wicca wicca wiki. Let's not make too many of those jokes. But yeah, according to the wiki, it says it's considered a modern pagan syncretic religion, and scholars of religion categorize it as both a new religious movement and as part of the occultist stream of Western esotericism, which kind of makes sense. It draws a lot from what I've been reading on some of the some of the more medieval faiths that were not. Oh my god, an itchy nose. some of the faiths that were more druidic, more nature oriented, and things like that before the Dark Ages and before Christianity started inquisitioning everything. Um, and it also draws upon some hermetic teachings, which is something that we talked about in the last episode of This Uncanny Earth. We talked about the hermetic traditions from Hermes Trismes. I can't even do it. Hermes, thrice gifted, thrice blessed, and his emerald tablet supposedly informed most of the hermetic lodges like the Golden Dawn and the AOA and things like that that followed. Um, but the big thing, like I said, is it's very, very decentralized. There's no person who is like, how Catholics have the Pope and Islam, they have, I don't know if they have a central, like one main person who's in charge of Islam at any given time. I don't think they're supposed to be because Muhammad was the central prophet, but with him gone, I don't think they had a central leader. I think it's groups of leaders and things. But regardless, um, Wicca does not have anything like that. They have their own priests and priestesses uh, after a fashion, but they don't have like an organized hierarchy where they all answer to one another or they all have to discuss things with each other or set rules. They don't have. When I was a church going youth, um, I was in a Methodist church and then a Baptist church, and then after that, I was pretty much done with it once I was into my late teens and early 20s. And they would have convocations. They would have big assemblies and big things where all the leaders of the churches and stuff would get together and decide on church bylaws and church teachings and things like that. And Wicca does not have anything like that. Now, what it started in the 1940s and 1950s, supposedly, um, and it has a series of what are called traditions. And traditions can be, it's not like denominations with churches because it's nothing strict like that. And it's not like divisions where it's like, oh, well, our tradition is right and yours is terrible and we hate each other. It's not like that either. Not like how Islam has the the Shiites and the what's the other one? I can never remember both of them, but they don't get along. But Wicca does not have that. These traditions are more like they take the basis of the faith and they're tailored to whatever particular group is following that tradition. So they take the basics and they build on it to the needs of the people that are practicing it in any particular area. Okay, does that make some sense? So it's almost cultural, it's almost geographical. There's a lot of different variables in there. Um, there's one called British Traditional Wicca, which strictly follows the beginning guidelines that were set down by a person named Gerald Gardner, who is supposedly the person who introduced it to the public at large in 1954. And he was a British civil servant, and he started with the organizational stuff. And so, if you want to be orthodox Wicca, I guess, which is not really an accurate way to call it because there isn't anything that strict about it. But if you want to be as close to the original tradition as possible, then British Traditional Wicca, BTW, BTW would be what you would want to follow, I guess. But as we're gonna read through here, you're gonna notice that Wicca is less about following a particular set of rules and more following how you feel about the traditions and about the rituals and how it makes you feel. more than anything else, which is important. And I think that's a good cornerstone as far as spirituality, because the difference, again, organized religion expects you to follow a certain set of rules, because if you don't follow these rules, then you're sinning and you're in trouble and you're causing yourself distress, and it's problematic. Whereas in a spirituality that's not an organized religion, like Wicca, um, you can bend things, you can turn things around, you can flip things, and you can kind of like you can tailor it to your personal style or your personal like morality, as long as it still fits in with the overall strictures of the basic framework. Okay, it's not very strict at all. So um now an interesting thing, because I didn't know a lot about this, so I'm picking this up with you guys. And Wicca is duotheistic, which means they have two deities or forces, universal forces that they usually worship respectively. And it's called, there's usually a female and a male, the triple goddess and the horned god. Let's look at the triple goddess here. And it's either a literal deity or it's an archetype of a deity, which means that you believe it not as a physical being that's going to come down and talk to you and punish you or anything, but it's more like it's a way to keep your mind focused and be like, yes, this is the central figure, um, and it's to keep you aligned with where you want to be. Um, and the triple goddess is supposed to be a trinity of three distinct aspects or figures united as one, kind of like how you have in Christianity. And Christianity may have gotten this from an old concept of that, where you have the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost. Okay. This one is from a much older set of traditions that you find in a lot of other places. And we're going to get to that in just a second. Um, the three figures are often described as the maiden, the mother, and the crone. And they're patterned off of the female life cycle and the phases of the moon. Um, and when I say that these are from other older traditions, it matches things that you find in classic English literature and in Viking stories. You have the Norns with the Vikings, and in uh, Greek literature, all the way back into Greek literature, you have the three sisters. Who I believe this was it Odysseus? No, because it was from Clash of the Titans. So who was that about? No, I can't remember. But he found the three Siriuses, and they didn't have eyes between them. They all shared a single eye that they used to help see the future, and they would pass it on themselves. A triple being, basically one being split into three. And in Macbeth, you had the three witches, which informed Macbeth about different things. So if you haven't read that, um, I believe they come up in Arthurian legend at some point. I'm kind of rusty on my old English traditional stories, but they also show up in, like I said, in Viking and in Scandinavian, um, Slovakian, a lot of those kind of things. Um, in the book American Gods, and probably, and I think in the TV show too. I watched some of the first season of the show, stopped watching after that, but the book is much better. Um, that's a good point. We're going to get back to that as well, Deadpool, because there's a lot of symbolism. There's a ton of symbolism in this kind of stuff, and that's what it's all about. It's about symbolism. Um, in the book American Gods by Neil Gaiman, it's my favorite book of all time, by the way. The TV series, not so much. The book, excellent. There are three sisters um, who symbolize the same thing, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody who has not read the book. Um, but that is the triple goddess. Okay, Now let's jump over to the horned god, which is the male opposite. And it's supposed to predate, the term itself is supposed to predate Wicca. Um, and of course, it represents the male part of the two deity system. And he's associated with nature, wilderness, hunting, the life cycle, and that kind of thing. Let me scratch my nose here a second. Man, like, I have to trim my beard because, like, the top part here tickles my nose and causes it to itch all the time. That's how you know the beard is getting out of control. But the horned god is a single deity instead of three. And he's shown with either horns or antlers. And he's often shown as having a beast's head, like a stag. Um, and supposedly it emphasizes, in quotes, the union of the divine and the animal, the latter of which includes humanity. And in the British traditional Wicca, he's regarded as a dualistic god of his own. So there's two parts of him. And he has bright and dark, night and day, summer and winter, the Oak King and the Holly King. That's probably a particular story I have not looked up yet. And it says, as an aside, the use of horns to symbolize duality is also reflected in the phrase "on the horns of a dilemma." So interesting. Yes, Leah, your name is popping up. Welcome. Deadpool says, yes, long beard problems. Yeah. So I usually keep it kind of trimmed a little bit short, but not out of control. So it's interesting because I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent here, because Deadpool, of course, brought up a good point about the rule of three. And three is a magic number, of course, for anybody who's into numerology or just spiritual things in general. And so you have the three parts of the goddess, and then you have the two parts of the horned god. And if you're a numerologist, that adds up to five. And five is the number of human sexuality, and it's the number of procreation, of fertility, of things like that. And that's a central part of a lot of these pagan beliefs: fertility, procreation, and things like that, being part of nature. As opposed to like where the whole Catholic idea was you have to have as many children as possible to raise them to be good Catholics, so we have more Catholics. In this case, it's more, celebrating love between people and things like that, which is really, really interesting concept. And while you don't get into numbers a lot so much in Wicca, it kind of fascinates me how they're interchangeable, how you can throw in the other different occult traditions back and forth, and everything fits together. So, and that was an important thing for me to learn, because again, and another tangent here, most, not all, most of the Wiccans that I have met throughout my life are, and I don't want to say most of the people who are Wiccans, but most of the people who have said that they are Wiccans, most of them have been really kind of shallow in their beliefs. They've been super basic about it. And it almost seemed like an excuse to be like, oh, yeah, I've got this, whatever, so they can be spiritual without actually doing anything about it, which I don't want to sound insulting, but you get that. You get that with Christianity, too. You get a lot of people who go to church every Sunday who say, oh, yeah, I serve the Lord, all that. And then they're out, causing all manner of mischief and things all the rest of the week. So it's not exclusive to this. So I was kind of put off by Wicca in my youth because so many people that I knew just kind of used it as a cop out, sort of. They would talk about it, but they didn't seem like they were super into it. They just thought, oh, it sounds cool. I'm cool for being a part of it, which is kind of an occult thing as well. Like people who are into the occult a lot of times are like, oh yeah, I'm into this, I'm into that. And they're only really in it because it looks cool or for status and different things. And so I didn't really give Wicca a fair shake. And so this here is now kind of informing me on a lot of stuff that I didn't know before. And it's super, super interesting. And further down here, it says that with the three aspects of the goddess and the two aspects of the horn god, they're mapped onto the 5 points of the pentagram or the pentacle. There you go. The number 5. Once again, number 5. So let's go back a little bit. We've got the 2 deities. All right, we've got the triple goddess and the horn god. Sometimes they're called the lady and the lord, and if so, they're capitalized as titles, as proper names. And they're sometimes, depending on the tradition, they're viewed as part of a larger grouping of deities that are less personable, like actual, like interactable deities, and more forces of nature. Leah says, my grandma was a serious Wiccan. It used to be a lifestyle that I don't think is practiced as serious now. And that's kind of where I'm getting at. Like, from all the research that I did over the last week or so to gear up for this, I see that there's a lot more to it. Like, it hasn't converted me to it. Like, I'm in my little space, my little pocket of spirituality, but I appreciate it a lot more than I did initially when I was young, which is good, because sometimes when you're young, you're really kind of dismissive about things, and you're kind of like, oh yeah, whatever, and you take a lot of stuff at face value, and that was a failing of mine. Of course, I took a lot of what people talked about Wicca at face value, so I looked down on it. I really kind of pushed it aside. I thought it was just some, you know, I didn't think there was much to it. It was all fluff, but there is quite a bit in it that is really interesting. And I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate it more, and I respect it more, which is kind of the point of this series that we're doing, so that I can myself respect some things a little bit more and kind of train my brain not to be quite so judgmental, because we all have a little bit of that. We're all a little bit too just judgmental in certain areas, and so I'm kind of trying to work on myself just as much as I'm working with you folks on this. So, and usually, Wiccan celebrations usually go along with the cycles of the moon, known as espats, and they're commonly associated with the goddess, and the cycles of the sun, which are based on sabbats and commonly associated with the horn god. And if you know a little bit of history, you know that there was the one of the things that was used in the Dark Ages and in even slightly more modern times for witch hunting was the Sabbath. Oh, they used the Sabbath. It's not the Sabbath as Christianity and Judaism has. It's the Sabbath, and it's when the witches go out and they cause their curses and they consort with the devil. So if you're doing the Sabbath, then you're evil, and that kind of stuff. So, but it's a concept that's been around for a while. So let's get into some of the beliefs here. And this is again where things get a little interesting, because I said it's real decentralized and it really depends on the people in a particular area grouping together to talk about it as much as it is the individual. Um, it includes theistic people, which are people who believe in deities, atheists, agnostics, who are people who are kind of unsure, but they're leaving the door open just in case. And there's a lot of different beliefs about it. I'm going to try to go through and see if I can find some particular stuff. A lot of the early groups, which are like British traditional Wicca, believe that that the horn god and the mother goddess um, were actually ancient deities worshipped by hunter gatherers in the Stone Age, which makes sense because a lot of your pagan traditions go back quite a long ways, and we don't know exactly where a lot of them started. And the idea, it begins in such old times that we didn't really even have writing for it. We just have word of mouth and traditional stuff that was passed down. Um, I'm going to go a little bit further here because I'm reading the article. I read it, or like I've been rereading it over the course of the week, but I haven't been able to memorize it yet. Which it happens, the old brain. So I'm going through here and kind of trying to work through it with you folks at the same time. Um, I'm trying to find something really good to point out here because it's going on and on about the monotheistic versus atheistic kind of stuff. But here's a good one. Here's a good one. Afterlife. You know how in Christianity, of course, they believe if you've been a good Christian and if you've given your life to God and you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Savior, you go on to heaven, right? And if you're Islamic, if you've done good works and believed in Allah and followed His praisings, you go to paradise, etc. Um, Wiccans don't have a particular common belief about the afterlife. Um, Mostly, it's that you have to make the most of what you have here and that there is going to be a next life, but it's not going to be some totally different thing. It's not going to be some paradise that's wholly separate from here. It's going to be another life, and it could be a reincarnation as another person, or it could be as an animal or a spirit or something like that, and which is different also than the some of the Near East traditions where they have the cycle of samsara, where the soul keeps repeating until it reaches a stage where it does go to some separate reward. Um, Wiccans instead believe that you just keep on going every time, and so you make the most of what you have when you have it. Next life, you do the same. Take care of the natural world, etc. Um, which is interesting because most religions and spiritualities have an outlook that there's eternity, that the things are never going to end, things are not going to be over. And as I talked about in the last episode, the previous episode, and one of our listeners, Ingrained Cyclist, um, he he mentioned that people are afraid of things being over. People are afraid of nothing, basically, with a big capital N. They're afraid that if you pass and if there's nothing else, that's terrifying. And it kind of is. I mean, I can see why. If this is all that you know, you can't really fathom all of this ending. Um, so, of course, uh, Wiccans commonly believe that you have a spirit or a soul that survives after death, and often it returns to go again. And I think that's a nice thought. As I've said before, I have a really kind of mishmash of spiritual and scientific outlooks on things, and I believe that because everything is made up of energy, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that the energy that animates you as a person after you bodily died, I don't think that energy is just going to dissipate. I think that energy is going to go on to do something else, whether it's going to actually be, reincarnation, or whether it's going to be something like that but different, or whether it's going to go on to some other different dimensional space. I don't know that, but I think that because we're all energy, um, I think you continue in some way. Whether you'll remember it, whether you'll know about it, who knows. Another thing that Wiccans have is they believe in magic, quote, spellcraft, um, which they do a lot of ceremonial ritual magic things, which is what puts them in the same kind of pocket as occultists, and where you get some of the hermetic traditions. Um, Now they have a quote from everybody's favorite bad guy, Aleister Crowley. He declared that magic was the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with willpower, which is kind of how I look at things. I think that the mind is a very powerful tool, and I believe again with how energy works that you can manipulate energy on a certain level and you can cause your life to change. Um, I don't think you can look at somebody and light them on fire with enough willpower, um, because their own willpower is denying that that's going to happen because that's silly. So it's yours versus theirs, and that kind of thing. Um, But a lot of Wiccans believe that magic is a law of nature, and that it's misunderstood or disregarded by contemporary science, which is, they got a point. And they don't view it as supernatural; they view it as an extension um, of the natural world. It's just something that's part of the natural world that a lot of people just don't understand yet, which is possibly true. Um, Deadpool says you're talking about the number 5, and I thought about his magic. And mind control is a battle of willpower, and that's possibly true. There is a lot of things. The political system and the propaganda machine that is mainstream media is built on the concept of thought control and willpower. And if enough people believe in something, it becomes fact, whether it is or not. Just because a majority believes that this peanut butter will grant you, enhanced energy and enhanced strength doesn't mean that it's actually going to. But if that many people believe it, then possibly it might after a time, because that's how willpower and magical things work. It's kind of interesting. Um, and so that's with Wicca, it's all part of the natural world, an extension of that, rather than something supernatural. It's not something that's to be feared or to be frightened about, and it's not something to be vilified. It's just something that is there, and whether you use it or not is up to you. And a lot of times they have, when they do their rituals, they usually have a sacred circle. They have various implements. Um, and Wiccans believe that their magic is white magic as opposed to black magic, which is supposed to be evil and linked to satanic things, which is bad. Um, and they also, a lot of times, they also identify right hand path, which is supposed to be magic performed with good intentions, as opposed to left hand path, which is opposed to malevolent magic. Which, I'll get into left hand path stuff later because there's some differences there. And so I have a disagreement with that, but I'm not going to be like, oh, you're totally wrong. That's what they think, and that's fine if that's what works. Um, a lot of modern Wiccans, which is why I saw it as kind of a more shallow, kind of, losing touch spirituality. A lot of modern ones don't even use the white, black, left, right, whatever. Um, and they don't get into that at all. They just, get into mantras and stuff. Um, Let me skip to another part of this. Where are we at time wise? We're about halfway through. And I want to make sure I get a lot of this in here. Practices. Now, one of the things that they wanted to do with Wicca is they wanted to bring they wanted to bring joy and euphoria and goodwill back into the religious experience, because as some of you, like myself, who have gone to church as youths, or even maybe you're still going to church now, I don't know, many churches are very, you start with a prayer, then you sing a song, then you do this, then you sing a song, then you have a sermon, then you do this, then you have a song, then you have a closing. It's all boom, 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 boom. Super predictable, start to finish. And I'm not going to say that all churches are boring, because I'm sure there are plenty that are like upbeat and like, yeah, we're all into it. But all of my experience with churches and organized religion were very dry, very long, drawn out. Methodism, especially, was all hymn based. It wasn't like these big worship songs that you get in like modern um, Episcopalian and like Baptist stuff. You don't get those big like loud singing, like everybody kind of going crazy. You have these solemn, slow hymns of praise and things, and I could never really feel anything through that. It didn't move me, and I always thought that being a part of something like that and how they talked about, they always talked about, oh, there's so much joy and love from the creator and whatnot, that you should be able to feel that. And I didn't feel that in churches. And I'm not saying that people won't. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying I didn't. And I don't think I ever would. Honestly, I don't think I can at this point. And maybe that's me. Maybe I'm damaged somehow. But I don't know. I disagree with that assumption. But um, whereas here in Wicca, they want to make it. They want you to feel. They want you to feel like you're involved with everything, with the movement of the energy, with the powers flowing around you, and they want you to feel uplifted. They want you to feel the positivity and everything like that, which is something good. So they have a lot of music. They have dancing. They have songs. They have all that kind of stuff. Um, and so a lot of people who are Wiccans, not necessarily for the actual religious aspect of it, which is the deities, are in it for the ritual experience because it makes them feel spiritually fulfilled. And that's really where we're at with this. The whole point of any belief system is to feel fulfilled. And I don't, it sounds almost a little selfish, but it isn't. Because usually you gather with a few people to feel fulfilled. And if you feel good, other people feel good generally, or you can help them feel good about different things. And so the whole thing about Wicca is positivity. It's being in the splendor of the world and enjoying yourself, but not to the point of debauchery and not to the point of excess. It's it's taking care of the world around you and the people around you and being joyful for it, which I think is a kind of a lofty concept, but I can respect them for that. I can definitely respect them for that. Um, to get into some facts here for you, when they do their ritual practices, they often have their particular times, like around the moon or the sun, and they often do things on a full moon or on a new moon, which is known as an espat, and they have a magic circle that they usually make out of dirt or sand. Um, you might invocate the guardians of the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west. Um, and that's it too. Like Deadpool brings up a good point. Um, to go backwards a little bit, he says the way you explain that feeling good around others who feel good sounds almost like a concert experience for fans of musical artists, which I have had that in the past. I have gone to shows that were so particularly like you're so into it, and it just everybody's having a good time, everybody's there, they're experiencing the moment, and it's just um, a good musical event is like a spiritual experience to me, and I know it is for a lot of other people. And I think music was always meant to be like that. I think music should cause reactions, even sometimes if it's bad reactions, and you're kind of like, oh, this new single by pop artist number 47 is utter garbage. It makes me feel kind of like dirty just listening to it. If it makes you feel something, it's doing what it's supposed to do, even if you don't like it. Maybe it wasn't meant to make you not like it, but still, I believe all music and all art in general should be you should be able to feel something about it, and that's what makes it what it is. Um, but they also identify the 4 points, north, south, east, and west, with air, fire, water, and earth. Um, and they have a classic ritual scheme, not scheme as in ha ha, ha, I have a scheme, but just outline. And this is from British traditional Wicca. Um, it starts with one purification of the sacred space and the participants. Now that can be done with fluids like not bodily fluids. Don't go that direction. But like spring water or the different essential oils. Um, casting the circle, which is actually making the magic circle, calling of the elemental quarters, the cone of power, which they're not particularly clear. Let me see if I can look that up and see what that is. Oh, it's a method of raising energy, and it's visualized as a cone of energy that encompasses the circumference of the magic circle. So it's a visual thing. It's a mind thing. It's a willpower thing. Um, so that's number 4. Number 5, drawing down the gods, which is not physically, of course, pulling them down or summoning them, or doing anything against their will, which is what occult magicians sometimes get into. They try to summon demons and things against their will and capture them. This is different. This is more like asking them to join you in the circle. 6, spell casting, so any kind of like ritual things that you want to do. 7, the Great Rite, which is I don't know if they have that here. I couldn't find it earlier, but I'll probably look again. And for anybody who wants to know, we'll look into it together. After that, they have number 8, wine, cakes, chanting, dancing, games. So number 8 is kind of like okay, we've called our deities down to be with us. We've cast our magic. We've asked for what we need to do. Let's celebrate. So every one of these is a celebration, and it's probably not always like literally always wine and cakes. It could be, whatever. It could be any particular drink that doesn't have to be alcoholic. It could be just juice, or it could be water. It could be whatever. And the cakes could be, I don't know. They could be pretty much anything, any good food that makes people feel good. And then number 9, farewell to the quarters and participants. So there is a set, but again, not every tradition is going to follow that to the letter, and they don't need to. Wicca is all about changing the various details to suit your own personal needs and those of your local area. They usually have a knife called a thame, a wand, a pentacle, and a chalice. And other tools they might use are a broomstick called a besom, a cauldron, candles, incense, and a curved blade known as a bowline. They usually have an altar of sorts present in the circle, which can be just a table or a large stone. And they place the ritual tools there, and they may have ritual representations of the god and the goddess. So, a lot of it is like most occult things. It's tricking the brain into throwing off the daily scientific drudgery stuff and getting into a headspace where magic can exist, so to speak, where your imagination can run around, where you don't have to feel like 9 to 5, I got to go to work in the morning, I got to do this, I got to pick up milk and eggs at the store. There's going to be a speech from Congress, and I'm not looking forward to that. It's supposed to throw off all that stuff for a little while and let you get back in tune with a more simple part of yourself, a more a less weighted down kind of place. And I like the sound of that. Again, I am probably not gonna become a Wiccan because I have some particular other thoughts about things in the universe that I don't think would mesh very well. But it might be a good fallback. And a misconception is that every one of these rituals is done skyclad, which is to say they do everything completely naked. Apparently, this was something that did happen in the past, but it's not as common now, and it's not something that was ever a requirement. Although the reason it began is supposedly, and this is kind of like a hearsay story, they believed, and some of them still believe, that if you do these things in the nude, it allows the energies to flow through the body unimpeded by the clothing that you're wearing and not weighed down by that, and that you're touching the bare earth with your skin, rather than having shoes, socks, everything, like all these barriers between you and nature. And that's the whole thing about it. It's about removing removing barriers. So, and there's more to it. Like, there's a lot more to it here that I don't think I can get into because there's just so much, and I don't think I can fit them all in here because I don't understand all of it yet myself. And I don't want to. I don't want to get into a space where I'm trying to make sense of it and I get it wrong and present it to you folks and then have to go back and and fix part of it. Um, Deadpool asks, Crowley was a big fan of being skyclad, so I've heard. Um, Crowley was big into another aspect that is not as big in Wicca as it is in other pagan things. He was into sex magic, which I'm not going to get into too much because I'm trying to keep the show kind of relatively clean. And when you get into sex magic, it gets kind of, I mean, we're all adults. We're all adults, probably. And I don't think they're going to be like dirty words for anybody out there. But, I'm trying to keep to the more spiritual stuff rather than the more physical things. But Crowley was big into that kind of stuff. Um, Crowley used a lot of that for symbolism, but at the same time, Crowley would sometimes let that get away from him. Crowley would be part of group orgy activity and a lot of other things that I think he would kind of get lost in, and I feel like it muddied his message a little bit. I've read a lot of Crowley things. I've enjoyed a lot of his writing, but I see different places where kind of he's either trying to like get a rise out of people specifically, trying to get a joke in there, or he's being deliberately kind of occult to mess with people, or sometimes with the whole sex magic stuff that he would get into. It, I think he got too into it. I think he got too high off his own supply, so to speak, sometimes. And so, and that kind of thing can happen when you have a lot of physical sensation. And and that's also true. He did do a lot of things that were just meant to anger the more religious people and some of the other occult people because he had a lot of disagreements with other various occult people that were his contemporaries. Um, he had a famous magical war with McGregor uh, no, not that's not his name. Matthew McGregor. What was his name? They have him listed here actually. Um, Let me go back. I know his name too, but it's just flying out my head here. Um, it was in the beliefs area, I think. Um, where was I talking about it now? Gosh, I lost it. McGregor Mathers, I think. They had this war of curses, and each would suffer like accidents and things in their households and stuff. And it got out of hand. It got out of hand. Whether any of it was true and whether they were actually casting spells at each other, people may never know. But it got pretty bad, and people did get hurt uh, as a consequence or a coincidence. Hard to say. Um, but a lot of your big offshoot kind of people in the occult do kind of fall victim to this kind of behavior. Anton LaVey, who is the infamous founder of the Church of Satan, 90% of, well, I don't say not I don't want to say 90%, maybe like 80% of everything he said and wrote was designed only to make Catholics angry. That's all. It wasn't meant to actually further any part of his beliefs. It was just meant to make them angry. And the other 20% was actually really interesting, good philosophical, spiritual things. And if you dig through his writings, you'll see what I mean. You can see where there's a lot of good ideas in there. And it's just, he'll say something that makes a lot of sense. And then he'll go on this rant about religious people. And it's all of his dressing up in costumes and all of his ritual stuff like that was intended to make people upset. The real ritual stuff that was actually meant to get things done was done behind closed doors. So That happens with people, unfortunately. But we're getting to the last 10 minutes of the show here, so I'm going to start wrapping things up a little bit. I appreciate everybody who tuned in. I appreciate Deadpool and Leah and I think you're the only two that were in the chat room, but I appreciate both of you for your thoughts. Um, I also I'm interested in discussing this further in comments and in messages and things like that for anybody who wants to, because I don't, like I said, I didn't know most of the things that I presented tonight before tonight. I did a lot of research and really kind of educated myself, and there's so much more to learn. Like all of everything I talked about here is just the basics. There's so much more. But if you would like to have a discussion about Wicca and maybe teach me a few more things that I didn't know, or even teach me some real world stuff that you have done if you are a practicing Wiccan, if you're somebody out there who listens to the show, um, then by all means get in touch. Drop a comment in the Facebook group, This Uncanny Earth Official, um, or on this YouTube video, because it's going to be on YouTube as well. This is, of course, on youtube.com/@ This Uncanny Earth. And yeah, I would love to hear more people's thoughts and have some more discussions about this kind of stuff, because I did learn a lot more than I can actually present through the episode, and I would like to continue learning. I am not, once again, probably likely to become a Wiccan, but I'm more appreciative and more respectful, I think, of the overall faith than I was before, which is really the aim of everything, as I've said throughout this video. Next week, what are we gonna get into? I'm not sure yet. Wicca was the big one that I wanted to start with because it's the most visible. Um, at some point, I want to get into Left Hand Path and all the different versions of that are out there. Oh yeah, they are. And Rob is in charge of doing the playlists on YouTube, and he doesn't have them all organized. And I don't. I can log in there, I think, but I always forget what the password is. He's the one who owns that, and he hasn't had the chance to organize everything into playlists yet. So maybe if you guys get on him about that, he'll get to it. I keep my channel all nice and organized with my playlists. But that's not a knock against Rob. He's got a lot on his plate too. So, yeah, you got to look under live broadcasts. Yeah. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing next week. I'm gonna do some digging and do some research and try to figure out something. So there will be something. As for the rest of the of our time, let's see what we've got. Monday will be the next episode of Let's Talk About This, which is my audio podcast from Spreaker. It'll also end up on YouTube after the fact. We are going to be talking about anime, which is another subject that I've never been super into, and I like so little of it. I just can't get into most of it. But Rob is going to be on as my guest because, of course, he would have to show up sooner or later, and he's going to tell me about some of his favorite anime and give me the lowdown on what it's all about. So Monday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, anime. Let's talk about this. Tuesday, it'll be Twitch Tuesday, and I'm going to be playing another game I've never played before. I don't have a game picked out yet. I'll probably pick it out last minute. Last time I played The Redress of Myra, and that was an event to experience. I'll tell you. I still don't know how I feel about that game. I don't know. But I'll come up with something else for that for Tuesday. Wednesday, we don't have any active programming, but Rob and I will be recording the Friday episode of This Uncanny Earth then, because he won't be around on Friday, and so we don't want to do another standalone show this soon after I just did that other one about Mothman. So we're going to be recording that, and that'll broadcast at the normal time on Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursday will be another episode of the Uncanny Spirits Club. I've got them all stacked up, all recorded, just waiting to boom, 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 boom. And then Saturday, another episode of this, the Saturday Spiritualist. So we have tons of programming for you. We have a lot of stuff to do. The Uncanny Media Network is a thing, and it is growing. Whew. So that's a lot of talking. That's a lot of talking. So, yeah, that's about all I got. I appreciate everybody who tuned in. If you're watching this after the fact, you can still comment and tell me what you think. I'd still love to hear it. We do read all the comments. We do still pay attention, whether you were part of the live broadcast or not. And with all that being said, that's all I got. That's everything. So, until next time, I will see you guys around, and be well.